Okay, so basically how this thing started is we were all trapped in the house due to COVID, and a group of people in my area, I'm in Chicago, United States of America, and a group of people basically in Illinois, I think, decided to form a Facebook group where they wanted to all build Italian Renaissance costumes, and they started by gathering together and deciding which thing they wanted to do first. And there was 1 month when they decided to do chemises, and this one lady was like, found some portraits with this border with X's on it. And I'm going to share my screen real quick just so you can see one, so you can see like an actual, if I figure out how, share screen. There we go. So I want to share this, and then I'm going to move over. Okay, let's see. And I'm going to go to, if I can get this thing to go down, this. So this is one of the portraits, is this one right here. I move this lady, and this is from like, I believe the 1400s, late 1400s, and I'm going to find, here's a close-up of it. So you can see here, he's painted this chemise, and it's got a little border of X's on it. And this lady had shown several portraits. This is one of them. And she thought that it might have been done using punto and aria. And so they decided to go find the local lace laurel, which would be me. Let's see if I can make this bigger. And so they said, hey, has this done using punto and aria? And I said, well, I don't think so. For one thing, it's the 1400s, and punto and aria, as far as I could tell, didn't start till like, the mid 1600s or maybe the early 1600s, depending on where you are. And I don't know, a lot of things are just dated 16th century. And I figured it was drawn thread work. So the problem is that, Italian ladies, according to my reading, were often trapped in the house. And I too was trapped in the house for months on end. We had COVID and I couldn't leave, and I got really bored. And I was like, I need a white work chemise. I'm going to try to make it. And I'm wearing it now. You can see it. I'm going to try to show you the close up. This will show in the camera. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is the chemise. And let me see if I can back it with something, maybe by hand. So it looks like it. So you can see the little X's. I don't know how well you can see it. Hopefully, I'm looking at the little box and I can kind of see them. So you can see the little X's. So I decided to make a nice white work chemise out of drawn thread work because I like this 14th century Italian because it's comfortable and I'm old. I used to wear Elizabethan, but I am too old for that now because I don't want to wear a corset. So I decided to make this thing using drawn thread work, and it came out pretty well. They didn't do a ruffle, but I was bored and I like ruffle chemises, and they had them in portraits, so I did it that way. There's a handout that I sent to the Miriam, so hopefully y'all can get that. I think she has a link to it or something, or there's a link on the event site, and you can follow along using that. And what I did is I just brought some linen, and I figured we could kind of do it together, and I could kind of go step by step using the drawn thread work. So basically, I got linen, and I get, decent linen. I didn't get fabricstore.com, which is a popular resource. We have linen. I use, because you want the nice long threads, because you want this to last a while, and you're taking the threads out. And so I got linen. I got 5 yards for this ruffled one. I got 120/2 linen thread. I'm just going to use thicker linen thread for this. A needle, some embroidery scissors. I just used these. But you can get any of them. These were like $10 on Amazon, but anything with nice pointy ends works. And just, a regular embroidery needle. So the first thing you want to do is you want a nice even edge for your chemise. You want it for your ruffle. You also want it for your sleeves. And what I did for this is I buttonhole stitch everything. Instead of hemming it, I just do buttonhole stitch because I'm a lace laurel for needle lace, and I've done like probably millions of buttonhole stitches, so I'm really used to it. It's a good stitch. They used it a lot in period, and it's great for edging things as well as lace. If you look at this thing again, you can see, if I can get this thing on camera, you can see here. I wonder if I've, this dress is dark blue. I should try to back it to this. I can get the skirt underneath here, just to get you a good look at it. You can see here the X's, and you can also see the buttonhole stitch border. So you want a nice straight buttonhole stitch border. So how you do that is you start by drawing a thread out. And let's see if I can show this on camera. I already drew one thread out earlier just to make this easier on myself. So the way you do this, let me see if I can get this on camera. I pull one thread out, and it's on the handout. So you pull a thread out, and I'm going with your needle. Where is the camera? Okay. So you can kind of yank it out so you get a nice loop or a thread. And then, I don't know if you can see this in this little square, what you can do, especially, and this is why you want your linen that has long threads, is you can pull it out or pull it till it rips, then stretch your linen out. And you just stick your needle in. And yank it out. And if you're careful, sometimes you can pull it straight through to the end. Get your thread out. See, this here is your linen thread that you are not going to need. And what you get then, I need to back this so you can see it. Okay. Can you see the thread, the dark line in the linen?
Yes, you can see that.
Okay, that's where the threads came out. So the first thing you want to do is you want to draw them out. You can draw 2 or 3 to make it easy. Then what you do is that is the edge you're going to use. So that's going to be where you buttonhole stitch. Now what I did is I went about 3 to 5 threads. I think I went 5 for the linen I'm using because it had really, this is pretty fine linen. And so then you go and you draw another thread out here. And I'm just going to do this real quick. This is a lot easier in person than on camera, but y'all are far away, so I have to do the best I can. And there's a handout that kind of has a diagram that I attempted to draw. And I'm going to pull that thread out. And I'm going to pull a few more out here so it's easy to see. I don't even know where I got this linen. It looks like nice linen though. Maybe not that nice. When the thread breaks, what I do is I take the needle. I take the needle and I stick it under the thread. under the thread, and then I have it looped, and then I pull it. Now, let me see if I can back this. This is what you get next. Can y'all, let's see if I can see it. Yeah, can y'all see the two dark lines now?
Yes.
Great. So once you have that, that is going to be your chemise edge. And what you do then is you cut here. So that it looks like this. So you cut along the first one. You cut along the first one. And you leave the second one. And then you buttonhole stitch over the solid. And that will get you your buttonhole stitched edge. Y'all know buttonhole stitch? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So I will show you how to do that. So this is a thick piece of linen, but I just usually do like one linen thread. I don't fold it over for buttonhole stitch, so I'm going to do that. Where am I? I am here. So then what I do is I feed the linen through, or feed the needle through here like this. There it is. You see how the needle sped through the edge of the linen? I'm going to pull this through. Get it there. That hides the tail. So the tail is stuck through there. Then, let's see if I can do this like this. Do one here. So what you've got is you stick it through the first one to anchor it. Now I'm going to stick the needle through. So I'm sticking the needle through the second dark line. I have cut the first one. There, there's two stitches. Okay, let me see if I can do it. Am I on camera? Yes. I am sticking the needle through. You see I'm sticking it through the second line here? And then I go through the loop around like that. So that will get you a buttonhole stitch. As soon as I figure out what the heck the thread is doing.
What distance would your two pulled threads normally be apart?
Horizontally, I do maybe a couple of millimeters.
Mm-hmm. And when you're pulling your buttonhole, are you going to keep that left piece of fabric flat, or are you going to bunch it up?
I do not want to bunch it up. I keep it pretty flat.
Thank you.
Because it's just a straight, even buttonhole stitch. Apparently, I did something wrong because I usually like look at it like this. So yeah, all I want is a nice, even, flat buttonhole stitch. So I'll just do a couple. And you just keep them kind of next to each other. And you just sit and you can watch, you know, MasterChef or Project Runway or the Kardashians or whatever you want to watch. You're not really looking at TV, but you can still hear them talk. And you can just sit and do your buttonhole stitch one after the other. And other than this one, you'll get like, you know, a pretty nice even border. I'll show you this. So basically what you get is just a nice flat buttonhole stitch border. And what you're creating is this one right here, the one on the top. That's your edging, right? So you do that. Then your second line here, your second line here, you pull out enough threads to create like about a half an inch of drawn thread. Does that make sense? So you just keep pulling threads out until you get about a half an inch. And I'm just going to do that real quick so I can show you. Does everybody know how to draw thread out? Did you see? Yes, yes, like that. Those are embroidered in a pattern, but yes, basically a half an inch is going to look a lot like that.
Turns out it is exactly half an inch, I measured. It's just an old project.
So give me a couple of seconds just to throw some more threads out of here. Okay. So basically what you get is something that looks a little bit like this. And you see, do you see all the horizontal or all the vertical threads where all the horizontals are removed? Is what I'm showing clear? I'm hoping it is, but I can't tell because I'm looking at this little tiny square.
Now, when you're holding it up, it's clear. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So basically what you want is something that looks like that. And you have a whole bunch of vertical threads. So it takes a little bit of time to actually do this. Because you have to sit there and you have to yank the threads out, and it takes a while, and you have to be fiddly because you want to make sure you get only the horizontal ones and not the vertical ones. And basically you spend a lot of time looking down, sticking your needle in here in good light with glasses if you're old like me. And you just yank threads out of here, and you just yank these horizontal threads. You've got your border buttonhole stitched already, the top part, so you've got it finished. That's why you want to do that first, because if you don't do that first, in a matter of time, this whole thing is going to fray. So I'm doing it. I did a little bit of buttonhole stitch, but I did not do a lot. But you want to get your entire border of your chemise buttonhole stitched before you start drawing out a whole bunch of these threads, because you know, it's only a matter of time before this thing falls apart. So I'll do a couple of buttonhole stitches just to show you, but it looks like that. And then I'll do a couple of buttonhole stitches to show the border. And so what I do for this is I buttonhole stitch the border, and then I'll do this like a couple of inches at a time. I don't draw out all the threads forever because I want to embroider it and have it kind of hold its integrity, if that makes any sense. Because if you draw too many threads out, yes, you want that secure, stable border first, because otherwise it'll fray. But you have drawn out a couple of threads all the way around. So all the way around, what you start off with is you start off with this. You start off with these two lines where you've got a couple threads on the top. and then you've got 2 or 3 threads about 2 millimeters below so that you know where you're doing it. And
People
then what
keep
you
dropping
do,
out. We've dropped down to like 9 or 8 people.
say
Oh.
what?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I just realized we had a few.
So then what I do as I go around the chemise is I cut an inch of the top, I buttonhole stitch it through the 2 lines, make that part buttonhole stitched, and then I cut another inch, buttonhole stitch that, I just go all the way around. This thing is like, I don't know, like 6 yards of border, because I was bored and I was home and I wanted a ruffle chemise. You don't have to do a ruffle chemise. I was crazy and trapped in the house. But
So the
it's
chemise is
about-
mostly made, and this is just finishing. You have a
Yes.
whole chemise, and then you're putting the ruffle on the edge.
Yes.
Cool.
You've got the chemise made with the gussets and the sleeves, and then you just do the edge, and then you draw the thread out, and you draw the threads about 2 millimeters below it, and then you have basically where you're going to buttonhole stitch your border, and then you just cut and you buttonhole stitch, and then you get your entire border done. So it looks a lot like this sleeve here.
Just working your way slowly around the neckline.
Yeah, because you don't want to cut it all because it will fray. I mean,
Oh yeah.
no, nobody needs that. So yeah, you get a buttonhole stitch border like this, except you have, a couple of threads drawn out below so that you make sure that it's all nice and even, because, it's all driven by the threads of the chemise, which is why you draw the 2 or 3 out below the 2 millimeter area to buttonhole stitch, so that you've got a nice even opening. Then once you're done with that, you draw out about a 1/2 inch worth of drawn threads to get this area here. Blanket under here. Get this area here. You can see where it's a 1/2 inch. And you have a 1/2 inch worth of drawn threads. For this particular linen, because the threads were fine, that was about 15 threads. And so I drew out about 15 threads, and that got me a 1/2 inch. And this is one of those square neck chemises, so I had corners. I'll have to find one. Where is a corner? That was kind of interesting, because what you have there is you have like a square, and you draw out your 15 threads here, you draw out your 15 threads here, and you have to just make sure everything matches when you do your border. You know what I'm saying? Because all chemises that you're going to work on are going to be square neck. So when you draw your threads out in your corner, when you get to the thread here,
You
that
just
is
have to
at the
eyeball
edge.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, then you draw your sleeve thread out. So you do it like you do the front, then you do the sleeve here, and then you get to the back, and where the thread ends there shows you where the back is, and then you do it there, and then you keep it all pretty even. Now mine wasn't perfectly even at the corner, so I think one has like 15 threads drawn out and one has 12, but it looked about the same, and I was good with that, because no one's going to be, it's all ruffled
Who's
anyway. But
going to
even if,
see that? Yes, no one gets
Yeah.
to see that.
because they are too close. So, and it looks pretty
It's
good.
not your 1.5 meters.
So then what you got to do is you've got to do your X's, and you want it to look like nice X's. So what I did is you've got to cut your thread. So the first thing is you cut, as you're ready, you cut all this crap over here. See, you've got it all like hanging off here. So you cut that off because you don't want to deal with that. That is nasty, and it's going to make your life hard. So you just cut it. You put it over here. You hope your cat doesn't eat it. But it's short, so even if he does, he'll just digest it, pass it through. Don't have any long threads. That's the problem. So then what you've got is you've cut your threads. Then you've got your vertical threads here. You got to decide how many to keep and how many to cut. What I decided to do, because I need a longer area between than in the X, because you have to have enough space between to get your X to work, but you don't want too much space because you want it nice and flat. You don't want bad tension and having it like, all gathered or anything. So what I decided to do is I figured out that I really only want 2 threads for each side of the X. And then I cut 6 in between. So I'm going to try to do that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you just kind of put your glasses on and you cut your threads. Cut it off. And I just did it right under the buttonhole stitch. So there's a break here. Trying to look at this little square. I don't know if it's showing on camera. There we go. Okay. So what I'm trying to show here. Okay, that's not working. Let me just break it. Let me show here. Is right here. Can you see where I have cut? Right here. You see the buttonhole stitch border. And then you see how I cut the threads underneath. And this is so fiddly. It's probably not the best Zoom topic. But you have 4 threads here. You have 6 cut. Then I'm going to do 4 here and cut another 6. Yeah, that's right here, so you can see the gap. Then what you do next is you buttonhole stitch the bottom as you go, because you don't want that to fray either, and it will. I mean, it's a given. I mean, just try to wash it for one thing. So you've got to buttonhole stitch the bottom. So the next step would be you take your thread and you just buttonhole stitch as you go, just like you did the top border. You just do that on the bottom border.
So you cut first and then buttonhole stitch.
Yeah, you cut first
Not
and then you
buttonhole.
buttonhole.
Then I'd be terrified to cut first and then buttonhole.
You can buttonhole first if you want, if you're more comfortable doing that. I've just done so many buttonhole stitches that for me, I just rather cut first, so I just went ahead and did that. But yeah, you can totally buttonhole first and then cut. And you don't have to worry about how, your buttonhole stitch doesn't have to be exact on the bottom because you're not drawing any threads out on the bottom. And then you cut your 6 threads. And if you have 5 threads cut, it doesn't matter because when you get to the end of it or get to a corner, you may not have 6 threads left. You'll have 5. It doesn't matter. All you care about is that this thing is reasonably even. And it looks like that. You see that with the little gaps? So then what you've got to do, now this is going to be fun. I have to make the X, which is not that bad except on camera. So, let me see if I can do it. So I'm going to make an X. So what I do is I've taken my linen thread, because you need the linen thread to reinforce every part of this X, because I don't know about y'all's linen fabric, but there is no linen fabric I've personally run into that is going to hold with 2 threads on a side. They're just not that strong. So I reinforce it with the nice linen thread that I bought from the manufacturer that's spun and made for sewing, because only that stuff is really going to hold. I did 120/2 because drawn thread work is really fine. So it's really fine thread in it. I suppose it could fall apart, but this thing, I've worn it though a few SPA events, so it hasn't yet. And it seems pretty sturdy. So I take 2 threads over here and 2 threads over here. Yeah, apparently I cut more than 4.
Can you move up?
And then what I do is I loop the thread in the middle, and I basically just do a buttonhole stitch.
Can you move it up a little bit closer to the camera? Yep.
Sure. Can you see it?
A little bit higher. Yep, that's better. Thank you.
Thank you, because I cannot see, so I really appreciate your help. I've got this little tiny square there, and I'm trying to see, but it just looks blurry to me. My needle through. Now I'm going to tie it, and then you see how I got a little X there? Can you see it?
Yep, we can see that.
Great. You see how there's a little X there? And you see how this side is reinforced with the linen thread? Now, I've got to embroider this X. So I'm not doing that one because that's my end. That's home. So I got to go somewhere else. So I'm going to go down this one. And this border would be buttonhole stitch so it would not fall apart. And hopefully, for this minute, it won't. Then I'm going to keep this thread down here. So now I'm down here. Do you see how I've reinforced that little arm of the X with this thread? That is really important because you do not want it to fall apart. And that little thread is going to be much stronger than the thread from this linen fabric. Then I'm going to loop through the bottom here because I want to, whenever you're doing any sort of open work, you want to anchor to your side so the buttonhole stitch doesn't just bunch up in the middle in 10 years and then fall apart. And then I'm just going to buttonhole stitch up to the middle. I've never actually, well, that. And, you know, it takes maybe 2 or 3 buttonhole stitches. And I did a terrible job drawing this X. I couldn't figure out how to draw the little lines and make them look different. Black and white. Okay, so there. So then I've got one buttonhole stitched edge right in the bottom part of this X right there. Now that part of the X is done. Can you see that? Guessing that's a yes. Then you're going to go down to the next side. And first thing you have to do is reinforce it and pull the thread through. Then anchor it and buttonhole stitch that one. Like that. And then you just keep buttonhole stitching. I stitched the blanket. Oh, sure. There we go. And then you just buttonhole stitch back up to the center. And that will get you the bottom part of your X. And then you just go up and do the top and do the same thing to the one side that you didn't reinforce. One here. And then once you're done with the 3 sides that then you just go back up to the one that you had reinforced in the beginning, and that'll get you home, and that'll get you your X. Does that make any sense? Are y'all good with what we've done so far?
I think so.
Cool. Okay, so basically that's what you do. And once you're done with that, you keep doing the X's. I'm going to try to do a better one that's not on camera because this thing looks like a disaster. So I'm going to try to do another one. And the cool thing about this is a thing you can wear, and then you'll have something that looks just like a portrait. It'll take you a little bit of time, but you know, you got TV watching time, so why not? Just do this while you're doing that. And you know, you're not trapped in the house as much, but we are still kind of, I don't know about y'all, but we are still kind of trapped in the house over here to a decent extent. Because we just don't have the amount of social gatherings that we used to. So I'm just going to try to start an X here. I'm going to try to do a decent looking one.
So I'll ask some questions to make sure I'm following this. We've left 2
Yeah,
threads, we've cut 6 threads, we've left 2 threads.
yes.
We,
And-
we've
and
built
then
the
what you-
X in the gaps.
Yes, the X is in the gaps because what you're doing is you're taking two threads from the beginning of the gap and joining them with the 2 threads from the end of the gap.
So the X
like,
is formed. The X is formed with the 2 threads. The two,
Yes.
two remote. Yes. Okay. Yes, I have that in my head now. Yes, I understand.
why don't we, since I've demonstrated, does anybody have any they're working on that they could show and I could see how you're doing, and you could show everybody. Good practice too.
Sadly, I have some white work from a past project I had that has been picked up and then dropped again. I understand. So this was a needle weaving, so it's pulling all the threads out and then weaving them together.
Yeah, we do that a lot on lace.
Yeah.
Do you want me to try to make a bigger X? What would be useful to y'all at this?
I can understand now how taking the existing threads and turning them into the X. I understand how that works now.
Yeah, because basically a lot of stuff I try to do is I try to make garb that looks like hair. I make all kind of crap that looks like that. And somebody asked me about this. So what can I do now to make this easier or more clear for y'all? Oh God, I don't like the way I look on Zoom. I should look at that.
I have it in my head.
Anybody does.
Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, or need me to demonstrate something?
No, I think that was pretty good, and I'll put it to sort of, when I have a look at the print copy, I think that will help as well. Oops, sorry, I haven't got my microphone down. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Pick up my microphone. So yeah, I think my big concern maybe that I'm not sure about is kind of the distances and how, like, is it purely counting the threads, or do you sort of judge distance, like if I make it too big, it'll be too floppy, yeah. But if you make it too small, you won't have enough room to stitch.
I based it, I think mine is a 1/2 inch, because if you because if you get I'm trying to type too. Okay, so yeah, I used 1/2 inch, because if I make it any bigger than that, then if I make it any bigger than that, it is going to be too floppy. And that looked like, according to the portrait, I figured she probably did it at I am permanently on catwalk. Okay. Got it. So let me do this. Okay, I'm permanently on catwalk, this old laptop, God knows why. But yeah, I used a 1/2 inch because that's about what it looked like in the portrait. And also, if I make it much bigger, it is going to be too floppy, because it looked like something that was very fine. And, it was almost basically like the linen fabric. And since it's a chemise, I want it to be the same weight as the fabric. I don't want it to be too heavy, because
yeah,
otherwise
that makes
it's gonna go
sense.
down.
Also looking at the stitch at the buttonhole stitch, it can be quite hard if you do it too tightly. So yeah, I want to keep it soft.
And I wanted to use a fine thread because I don't want it to be heavy, because it needs to float on top of the chemise, like you see how it just kind of stands straight. That's because it's very light, and it's 120/2 linen thread that I used, which is the finest I could find. So yeah, it makes it very light, and it's basically the same weight as the linen thread, but the thread you buy that is made for sewing is way more sturdy than at least our linen. So I don't, some people are talking about, oh, I'll just take the linen thread, out of it. No, look at this. This thing will break like nothing if you take the threads from the fabric. So I don't know. People have said that's a really cool thing to do, but I don't know. It looks like a disaster to me, so I don't do it.
Yeah, I tried pulling I tried pulling threads because someone said it was a technique for finding like the vertical for something. I've forgotten what I was making at the time, and I found it just broke. I think it was partly the quality of linen that I was using, obviously, and plus poor technique on my part. Yeah, it just broke.
But if you get the nice, I think the thread I'm using, I just find whatever I could find. I'm gonna pull up my little sewing bucket, this little picnic basket.
I'm hoping
I
somebody in
don't-
Australia sells that because postage from the USA is really terrible at the moment. They're not using UPS anymore, and even small objects can be really expensive at the moment.
I believe it. Yeah, I don't know. The whole world is kind of half crazy with everything.
To answer your question on the drawing threads out of linen, you pull a thread when you're wanting to make sure that you're cutting exactly on grain, and that's a standard thing to do when you're working in linen. But a lot of modern linen, woven linen, is very poor quality, and so the threads do break very easily.
Yeah, I didn't have any luck with it at all. It was quite frustrating.
What you can do is when you pull it, you can make it. You can pull it out, and if it only goes part of the way, then just break it and then use a pin to find where it's broken, flick up the end and keep going.
Okay, yep, that
So
makes
you
sense.
don't need to try and pull the whole thing out at once. In fact, it'll be really, really hard to do so. And once you've got the first thread out, subsequent threads are much, much easier to pull.
Yeah, and that's why I like to pull 2 or 3 so I can see it. This, by the way, is the thread I'm using. It's this buckets. This is 90/2 because it's what's in my sewing basket, which I use for lace a lot. But you just get the 120/2 over at Lacey's.com, or I don't know. There's probably a place in Australia where you can order this stuff. I just
I'm
don't
sure
know
there
where,
will be.
'cause I'm far away
Yeah,
from
yeah.
there. That goes in here. Oh, it doesn't. I don't know what goes in there. I'll have to figure all that out later. So yeah, so that's basically how you do it. So at this point, just anybody has any questions, I will be happy to like show something or answer whatever I can.
You've talked about how to do the little X's. Have you tried any more elaborate designs based on the paintings that you've seen?
I have not seen more elaborate designs on any chemises, but I have done for handkerchiefs and stuff. I've done like I've looked in like the DMC Encyclopedia of Needlework has like 5 million different things. Like you have the fan where you can break it out into like 8 pieces. You can needle weave like Mouse was showing. I've done some of that. A lot of what I do too is it's buttonhole stitch, but I was showing this earlier. Stuff like this, which isn't drawn thread work, but it's the next thing, which this is Punta and Aria, which is
It's
what,
like Punto in Aria. Yeah.
yeah, so maybe I can back this with some black. So I've done stuff like this too. And this is literally all buttonhole stitch.
But very effective.
Yeah, it makes some.
Wow,
It makes
that's
nice
beautiful.
Matter of fact, and another thing I did, I'll just show you this because we're here. This doesn't really go with the period that I'm doing with this Italian because they did hairnets. But I'm like, I'll make anything out of needle lace. I make pictures, portraits. I did a hairnet because I'm like, I know how to make needle lace. I can make a hairnet. So I like it. It's from Matteo Pagano, which is 1540s, which is the earliest book on needle lace there is. And I just stole some patterns off of his and I made this hairnet.
Yeah, I've done a pattern like that. Yeah. Do you do the French knots in it too? The picots?
Yeah, I do picots. I cheat though. I just do instead of doing an actual picot, I'll do a chain of buttonhole stitches because it's fast and it looks about the same. And I don't want to die before my lace project is done, so I cheat and do it that way. And I bet there was somebody in the 16th century that was wanted to get the freaking project done, probably so they could eat, and did something like that. It looks like picots. I don't have any picots in the hairnet, but this thing has some. Maybe, yeah, this thing does. As you can see in the corner.
Okay, I've just used French knots when I had to do them in the samplers I've done. I've not done any wearable pieces in needle lace. I've just done lots of little samplers. Oh, hang on, no,
You know-
I did a bit of. I did do once an order that ended up on a princess's chemise. So yes, there was one wearable piece I've done.
Yeah, and you know something, I'm pretty sure, because I've not seen any like specific instructions on how to do needle lace from the 16th century. They have like pictures, and I think people just like made it work. You know, I mean, they didn't come up with maybe some stitch from Dior's atelier that he came up with in 1950, but you know, your basic stitches, they probably just made it work. Because, you know, wherever you are, if you don't know anybody, like if you're in England or something in 1670 or 1575, and somebody brings over a book from France with needle lace patterns, you know, you're just going to probably try to figure it out, much like I did in the 20th century or 21st century. I just looked at pictures and figured it
That's
out.
what I found. Yeah, you have the lace making stitches, and you have the pictures from the 16th century, but there's nothing that joins the two. You've just got to make those assumptions yourself. Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, pretty much that's what I did. Is I just sat and figured it out, and you know, there's some nice pictures of needle lace, and if you're lucky, you get to look at some. I didn't, but I stared at pictures from books and on the internet, and just kind of looked at it and went, well, how did they do that? And just figured it out from there. And it was interesting because other people said, no, I got this book and they said they did it like this, and I'm like, well, lace doesn't look like the picture. So I think it has to be, you know, I think you have to do like your bars first, you know. And yeah, and I make all kinds of stuff out of it. I've been making real clothes out of it. I made a bunch of nightgowns that I wear at work because I never go on camera. And I just sit in my little bathrobe and nightgown and sit in the staff meeting. I look really good. I probably look better than them because the lace looks good.
I think that at the time, you're right. Most people there weren't instruction books on how to do the stitches. That wasn't how it was done. It was done by one person teaching another person, and you would have somebody who showed you how to do the basic stitches. But then you're right. If you were getting a pattern book, you would then apply the stitches that you knew to try and reproduce the pattern that you were seeing there. So I think that if the stitches are of the time and the pattern is of the time, I think the interpretation is an entirely reasonable thing.
Yeah, and you know, and I do think, you know, some things like, I don't think they had puntenaria in the late 1400s. They did have drawn thread work, so and it was easy to do this made out of drawn thread work. So that was my theory. I hope that lady wasn't upset because then I got bored and made it. But yeah, and you know, they thought through things and figured things out. But yeah, I basically, you know, look at the resources of the time and what did they have. That's how I did it. Even with the embroidery, because I embroider all my garb like this thing. It's a pretty simple pattern. And you know, I just figured it out based on like, what did they have? Well, they had pins. You could just pin a small part, and then I based it on with a crappy piece of thread. And then I have a pattern, and then I sew it on. And then I'm good. I got garb. And this is Gutermann silk on linen. I'm off topic, sorry. Any other questions?
We have about 8 minutes left of this session, so I can stop recording now if you'd like. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to continue chatting and things.
Whatever you guys want to do is good with me. I'm just happy to be here. I'm thrilled that I got to meet all y'all, because I will never go over there probably.
I think people might like possibly to go and grab a drink or something, but there's no reason for people not to just keep chatting.
Okay,
Cool.
I'll stop recording now then.